today we're going to work on combining what we learned in the last 2 days and kind of doing all of that in one problem, and then also learning how to solve equations using the factoring skills that we have learned. So first, let's look at number 1 and 2. Typically, the directions for this might say something like factor completely. Often when we're factoring, the first thing that you should always check is greatest common factor. Do the terms have anything in common? Pull that out first, because that's going to make it easier to factor what's left. So number 1, 5x squared plus 5x minus 10. Do those 3 terms have anything in common?
5.
Yes.
5. So we could factor 5 out of them. Can we factor x out of those 3 terms?
No.
No, because negative 10 doesn't have an x. So if we divide each of these terms by 5, 5x squared divided by 5 leaves us with x squared. 5x divided by 5 is x, and negative 10 divided by 5 is negative 2. Now we need to factor what's left inside the parentheses. And because we factored out the 5, this is going to be easier to factor because there is a 1 in front of this x squared. So we're looking for 2 numbers that multiply to give us negative 2 and add up to positive 1 because of the 1 that's right there. Ways to multiply to get 2. 1 times 2. So it would need to be negative 1 and positive 2. And because the number in front of the x squared is a 1, this is the simple type of factoring where we can just drop those numbers directly into the parentheses and call it done. We just have to remember that there was a 5 in front, and our fully factored form is 5 times the quantity x minus 1 times the quantity x plus 2. In number 2, first think about what do those 3 terms have in common. It'd be really nice if they had 8 in common. I always check this number first because I would really like it if this was just plain y squared instead of 8y squared. But I don't think we can do 60 divided by 8 and get a whole number. So it's not 8. What about 4? Does 4 work?
Yes, it does.
So 4.
7.
7 doesn't work because of the 8. But yes, 7 is what's going to be left in the middle. Okay, first term divided by 4, we will be left with 2y squared. Negative 28y divided by 4 would be negative 7y. And negative 60 divided by 4 is negative 15. Okay. If we had not factored out the greatest common factor, we would have had to do 8 times negative 60, which is a crazy big number, and we'd have to figure out 2 numbers that multiply to give us this crazy big number and add up to negative 28. That would be a lot more challenging. Here, we are looking at 2 numbers that multiply to give us negative 30 that add up to negative 7. It's going to be 3 and 10. And to get negative 7, your bigger number would need to be negative. So 3 and negative 10. Because this factoring problem has the 2 in front, we do have to split this into 4 terms. So 2y squared plus 3y minus 10y minus 15. Honestly, what I've done right now, I like to either circle or highlight that number in front just to say, okay, I know that there's a 4 there. We're going to save that for later. Let's deal with this factoring, and then we'll put the 4 back in front. Factor by grouping, we need to split this down the middle. What do 2y squared and 3y have in common? Y. And if we take the y out of both of those, we'd be left with 2y plus 3. we need to drop this negative sign down. You need to use that negative. Negative 10y and negative 15 have negative 5 in common. And that will leave us with 2y plus 3. So our factored form is y minus 5, 2y plus 3. And don't forget there was a 4 in front. Okay, so really that was just combining the skills of greatest common factor and factoring trinomials that we've done the last 2 days. Now the one piece of slightly new. We are going to solve equations using factoring. We're going to start with number 5. What do these two terms have in common? 2x. 2x squared divided by 2x would be x. 2x divided by 2x is 1. Okay. The directions do say make sure the problem is in standard form first. The really important thing there is that the equation equals 0. You want it to say equals 0 before you start factoring. Okay. Imagine that I have two numbers in my hands. I'm going to multiply those two random numbers together. The answer is 0. Can you guess what one of the numbers is?
0.
Because the only way to get 0 through multiplication is if you multiply something by 0. So the theory here is that 2x has to equal 0, or x plus 1 has to equal 0. There are two solutions to this. There's one solution where 2x equals 0. There's another solution where x plus 1 equals 0. How do I get rid of the 2 in front of the x?
Divide by 2.
Divide by 2. 0 divided by 2 is 0. How about x plus 1 equals 0? We'd subtract 1 on both sides, so x equals negative 1. You just found the x-intercepts of a quadratic function. You just found the x-intercepts of the parabola. This is why when you're finding the intercepts, it's the opposite, because you're looking at where does that set of parentheses equal 0, and so the x value is the opposite of the other number. Now let's jump down to number 7, which I know is on the next page. Before we solve this type of equation, we need to get it to be equal 0. We want the x squared term first, and then the x term, and then the number term, or in this case, y's, because it's y's. By the way, if you change the y's to x's, I will not count it wrong. Some people really hate writing y's. If you want to change them, I'm cool with that. I am going to subtract y squared on both sides and subtract y on both sides. I'm really trying to get equals 0 on this side, so I'm getting rid of both of those terms on the right side. When you're doing this process, you want your x squared to be positive. So wherever the bigger x squared is or the bigger y squared, subtract things from the other side. This gives us y squared minus 7y minus 8 equals 0. I would like you to take a minute and see if you can factor y squared minus 7y minus 8. If you're watching the video, pause the video, give that a try. The factored form is y plus 1, y minus 8 equals 0. You have one solution where the first set of parentheses equals 0. So when does y plus 1 equal 0? When y is negative 1. So our first solution is y equals negative 1. You have another solution where y minus 8 equals 0. When will y minus 8 equal 0? When y is positive 8. So our two solutions are y equals negative 1 and y equals 8. if you were to put y squared, or we'd change it for the graphing calculator, x squared minus 7x minus 8 into the calculator, it would cross the x-axis at -1 and at +8. Now let's go to number 4, I guess. It's already equaling 0. So next we would think about, do these three terms have anything in common?
No.
And unfortunately they don't. I think you all might try to murder me in a second, but that's totally okay. I can deal with it. 9 times 25.
225.
We're looking for two numbers that multiply to give us 225. That's a big number. And those two numbers also need to add up to -30. So if I gave this to you as an assignment, you'd have to sit there and try, all right, it's definitely not 1 times 225. 225, 5 times 45, that's not quite right yet. I'm going to give you a little hint.
It's 15.
Yeah.
It's 15 and 15. So -15 and -15. -15 times -15 is +225. -15 and -15 adds up to -30. So if we write our four terms, we got 9m squared minus 15m minus 15m plus 25. Split this down the middle. What do 9m squared and -15m have in common?
3m.
3m. Divided by 3m, divided by 3m. That would leave us with 3m minus 5. Okay, always make sure whatever symbol you have in front of the third term, use that symbol. 15m and 25 have 5 in common. So we're dividing all of these by -5. That leaves us with 3m minus 5. Do you see how if we didn't use a -5, we would have ended up with -3m plus 5, and that wouldn't have fit, so we have to make sure we use the negative. Okay, this looks a little bit crazy. 3m minus 5, that is our first set of parentheses. And then this 3m minus 5 is our second set of parentheses. So we could write 3m minus 5 squared. But when it comes down to it, for solving, we want to know, when does 3m minus 5 actually equal 0? That will be the true solution to this problem. How do you solve that kind of equation? Add 5 to both sides. Divide by 3. So m equals 5/3. You don't have to worry about decimals, just leave it as 5/3. If you have truly factored everything, this fraction will already be in simplest form, which is kind of nice. All right. On your worksheet, it's 3.1 day 3 worksheet, which I'll hand out in a second. You are going to do numbers 1 through 4 all, and then numbers 7 through 19 odd, or all for bonus.
How much? 5?